Hey people, I've been reading this chapter, Isaiah 44, in the Greek, in this folder called KIPPUR. And I was having trouble at the end, so I come to read this in the Hebrew first. And so this first 5 lines, this paragraph here, is just one big poem about a guy, and it's just telling about his qualities. And so it starts, names have meanings. In the Bible, everybody gets named and they'll tell you the meaning of the name. They don't always tell the truth of what that meaning means. But this has several names here. And it's Jackals, Davy. J-O-Q, and then the dot O of, and then a B-O-B, and then a D-A-V and Y. Jackals, Davy. And so that jack of, is the guy who does that job, anybody. And the rest of it's going to give the specifics, a lumberjack, a steeplejack. And so a jackal Bob, B-O-B, is somebody who avoids, trying not to get hit, bob and weave. And a Davy is an oath, to avoid the oath. Bounce around different women, and when one tries to get serious and get the oath out of you, you bob, you disappear and go another place. What ism of a Jackal Bob Davy, visceral in a chart 2 above, is visceral, is neurotic in a chart. The chart is, we mapping over the water, we call it charts. It's a map on land. But, the heavens are also the waters. You chart your birth chart, and visceral in the chart of IBOV, above, the chart above. So, it's not talking about the waters, but it's talking about the heavens, astrology. And so, Jack of, J is the work, and the O is to see, and Q is center. That's the center of your job, the works of. And he works of the steeple, he's a steeplejack. He works of the lumber, he's a lumberjack. And the Jackal Davy he works to see the center, his core. What his main job is to bob Davy, to avoid the oath. And so they say, Jacob was God's favorite and talked about most in the Bible. And that's because that's everybody with a job, the works of. This includes everyone. And it ends here, a sire, I-S-I-R, a sire, all he, A-L-Y, all he, and can. And then underneath is it H-U-E, and a sire, all he can do. He's trying to, a sire is to leave your seed, He's trying to lay all the girls. A sire, all he can do. So I'm going to try to read all this in between here. What ism of a Jackal Davy? And so, what ism? This is a W-O-T, and underneath that says A-E, so A-E becomes E-S. What is? What is? And then this ism, it's a S-I-M. The S-I-M, that's the base for the name. Every time it says the name, what is name of the Jackal Davy? Visceral in chart 2 above. And it comes from S-Y-M, as in similar. And because everybody's named for what they're similar to. Hey, he looks like a dog, we call him Rough. The the similarity of. So this should tell us the name of Jackal Davy, which I believe is talking about Mercury. Mercury is the fastest planet. It's steadily back and forth. It's bobbing, visceral, neurotic in the chart 2 above. Co-erm, amor, marry, hoo-hoo, shaka. Why, it's circumventing. A K-O-E-R is a dog, It's also the garden, and it's the co-er, along with the coerum from, and then amar, they say is the word, and it has to do with where the planets are sitting. I ain't exactly figured out how they're getting the word, but I know it's coming from where the planets are in the stars is the word Amar. The Koram, a word, and then come back and get this, the Mary who, and then H-O-O who. And so you can't get this by somebody reading it to you. You have to see this, the spelling of the words. Who is an owl. Who and Shachem, who Shaka, and where you were made was in the bed, who Shack. And the Koram, more, more, MR is high. You got more, your stack's getting higher. And the Koram, more, Mary, who, Shaka. And why it's circum, W-Y is Old English for how or who, how it's circumventing, around vetting, to letting it out of circumventing. And that's going with this I over here, making the N-I is ing, circumventing. As rock all are it. As rock all are it. Hit them all. And then underneath A, era. As rock all are it, era. In that time of day. D and the dot underneath says A, D-A-Y. In that era of day. Jockey, J-O-Q, and then above is a Y and then a O. And the jockey of Y's run in the chart 2 above. And so this reads a couple ways, and so most of the time I read it, I call it, following the top marks. And what that means, I obey all the upper vowel points and directional markings. And when there's a dot in the letter, it's telling me to obey the lower marks. It reads again with the lower marks. And so either way this reads, it's going to say the same thing, the K, K-A-Y, which is the key in the Greek, and it just replaces a vav. It means, and, or connected, or a W, U, or a V. And so this just becomes a vav, a W. And so this is what's, W-A-T-S. What's, and then A, what's, and then Q. What's a femum, him. What's a femum, him. And then this again, mim, and then a final M, M-I-M-M. What's a femum, him, mimel. A mix. What's a fem, of feminine, the woman, him, the woman, the femum, them, and then him, mimol, a mix. And so I believe that M-I-M-M-O-L is short for minimal. And I think you'll still see it in some scientific papers. But, what's a femum, him, mimel, a mix? Is minimum of the feminine side. And then me, M-I is M-E, me, and me of A-V. Me of nuzzle nuzzle them titties, who is thirsty and floods. All is of bay and a save axits for witchy. All backwards, E-S, and then under the S is a A-V, of. All is of bay, B-A-Y, and B is in. And then the S, the dot above says A-V-E. And all is of bay, bay to corner them up, to bay them, to bay in. The save and X, A-X is where your word A-S-K comes from. And the dot after the X says there's two X's, so it's an AX and then a TS. Axits and axits for. And all is of bay and save axits for. Witchy and two Y's. Witchy yolic, O-L-K. Olic, what you live for, alcoholic. All your life is for alcohol. An olic, a workaholic. And witchy olic. O-I-R, Oyers is the judge, the Oyer terminer, to hear. And witchy olic, Oyer, to hears the Roy, the king, the king, K-A-U-V, conversed, K-A-U-V-R-C-T, conversed, like V-E-R-S is a verse, my blessing, conversed. To talk them into, conversed. to converse, y'all. And same here, this is a K-A and a Y turns into a W, and it's W-A-T-S. What's at sat sake? What's at sat sake? And so when it's the Roy converse, the talking the king into, y'all, what's at sat, what's at sat sake? What's at sat sake when you're the king is the throne. What's who Viven hexer? What's him who's V-I-V, lives, survives in the hexer. They're getting this grass from court. The hex, they say, is the court. And that's this mark on top of the Narmer palette. This is called the courtyard. And that's where the name goes. And it's not Narmer, it's the official. But yeah, it's survive. If you vive in the court, that means you're the official. It's another way of writing official. And so they'll say that hex is the court and the hexer is the judge. What's the meant vive in the hexer, the judge? Two O's, co-orbum, along with orbum is planets, is what orbs, orbs, and they orb around, they orbit. That's where all your words for the planets comes from, the orbs and the orb them. And holy, O-L-Y, holy lovable, I am him, mim, I am, and then back the other way, I am. What's who vive in hexer, co-orbum, holy lovable, him, mim, a mim is the prayer leader. In a mosque, a mom comes from the leader, to lead the way. And you also see it in the Irish, to go around, to go, to lead the way, to leave, to go away, travel, go round, circulate. The base being the I am I. What's who vive in hexer? In the court, the judge, living in the hexer, in the courtyard. Co-orbum, holy, lovable, mim. Lovable him, mim. Lovable him goes around. And you also see that in the word for day, is the I am I, which is a jimmy. Jimmy is one little step of a jack. Each little click is one more jimmy. And holy lovable him, the jimmy from, another click from. And so all the other planets go around, real slow, and he's real quick. He's the jimmy. And so this Z-E, they say it's this or it. And, it actually means to cut the. And so it has everything to do with the next word, to cut the yammer, to cut the word. He's the one creating the word. Is yammer, is the word in two R's here. Relief, hiney, H-A-I-N-Y, the hiney. Is the yammer relieve, the hiney, use. The word to relieve behind, use. If raves, R-A-V-S, if raves, and E-U-M, if raves whom. And then backwards, J goes backwards now, and it's B-O, the dot above the Q puts an O in front of it, and buku. And if raves whom, buku of much, the joke of. And so he's also the jester, the joke of, and that's the one who controls the king, is the jester. And if raves whom, buku, a much joke of use. Hicked of, H-I-K-T-O-V, the hicked of. And hicked, this where you hick comes from, and hicked of is unintelligent, what they'll say. And much of the joke of use, hicked of, it means it dumbs it down for everybody to understand. Because the king's not usually as bright as the jester. He just got born there. He wasn't elected for his intelligence. And buku joke of use, hicked of, the hand of, the identification, ID of, and to use. The hand of Aleve, Uliev, like the Aleve medicine to relieve your pain. The hand of Aleve, and Uyew, and that's the U as in when you're talking about the gods. That's where Jehovah comes from. Why Yod He Vav He. You Vesem, VSEM, to fill him. You Vesem, a sire, all he can who. You fill him to a sire to leave your seed all he can who. So what is a Jackal Davy? Visceral in the chart to above. The court jester, he's visceral. He's wise in the astrology. Oh, but king, the stars say you shouldn't do this today. The Koer, Koer, along with the Koer from the word coming from the king, is merry. Hoo-hoo. The jester's always throwing his 2 cents in there and making a joke out of it. And he makes sure, that he's embarrassing the king, so he has to add the hoo-hoo in there to make sure, hey, it's just a joke, I don't mean it. Although he totally means you're an idiot, but he adds the laugh in there to keep him from getting strung up. Who it's circumventing, and going around and letting it out. And as Rock Alary, Alary, Alary to, is Rock Alary to heir of day. And so Alary, Lary, is a name meaning of Laurentum, of the king, the one wearing the crown. As a rock, it's to shake old Larry up there, of the day jockey, the day to ride of, who's run in a chart above. What's at femim amidst? Letting out just a little bit of the feminine side amidst me of the nozzle him. The nozzle is the place where it comes out. The nozzle him. All is of, all es, and then underneath that s is a AV, and all is of, and that's reminding the king, that all is of God. That's why God is all of him. All of him. Everything is of God. And so all is of, is where everything comes from. All comes from the stars. And all is of baying, baying, cornering up. And SAVE or CAVE, savits. And all is savits. And that's Latin, let a person be aware, to let the king know, a warning, stipulations, conditions. But the stars are not in your favor today, and all is of bay in savits. It's for witchy aulic is what he lives for. The oars to hears the king converse, to change the king's mind is what he lives for. Y'all what's at sat's sake, to the all what's at sat for your throne's sake. I'm doing it for the sake of your throne, king. So I don't see anything I want to change in this fourth line, and that's because I was reading on down and starting to get it, and that's why I had to go back up and change some of the beginning, and that's the way this is. You have to read it several times in order to get it. But what's who vive in Hexer, live in the court, the co-orbum, along with the planets, all the holy lovable him Jimmy from to lead the way from to the small click. And this last line, it looked like I hit it pretty good too. Is the word relieve the Heine use if ravesome? Is the word relieve if Heine used to come after to use if ravesome? If you pissed him off with what you said, there's a word that you have to use, if you pissed him off, if raves him. A buku, much the joke of, use hicked of. I'm just a big old joker, a buku joking, the buku joke of, to use hicked of. The hand of Aleve. The hand of Aleve you, Vesum to fill him, a sire all he can who, to plant all the seed you can. You got to flatter the king after you straighten him out. Buku, it's just a big old joke. Oh, but your holiness that God created so much better and smarter than everybody else. Your holiness that God loves more than everybody else. Everybody, the Jack, everybody. So, I read this down in the Greek first, and I know better to let me think that it's talking about the same thing because the books are the opposite. And so I'm going to start reading into this one God. I read just little pieces of this when I was trying to figure out the Greek. But this will come up in the next movie, and I'm sure these are going to be better than all of them. But it really helps to see, that this is coming from the jester, Mercury, the messenger of God, Mercury, the one who reads the stars. All right, I'm going to cut this off here. Good day.